Hello, good morning. I'm just waking up. I promise I didn't wear this yesterday. It's just something that I throw on. It's like a house coat almost. Okay. Now, I've got my little hat on because I was cold. So we went to the movies last night. Listen, it's going on 10 a.m. here. And look, I don't even have our fireplace on. It's just Roku City. So we always go to the late show because we like to, I don't know, we're weird. We just don't like to be in a crowd. Like at the movies, it just annoys us. So we went to the 10:10 show of Fire and Ash, the new Avatar movie. That movie is 3 hours and 20 minutes long. So we're like, at the 2-hour mark, 2.5 hours, we're like, is it over yet? It was really good. It was very full of action, but oh my word. So then we came home. Timmy has the zoomies. So then we came home and I had to throw some dinner on. Well, that was a mess. Careful. The veggie pot pie was awful. Thank goodness I had leftovers from Christmas Eve. Timmy, you're gonna hurt yourself. Oh my word, he's just on a tear. Anyway, it was just this whole thing. I don't know what time I got to bed at. It must have been 3 a.m. But it's a beautiful day, so anyway, here I am. And I'm just so curious to know what happened next. Make sure my mic is on. Yep. So we're gonna continue with my story. I was feeling guilty. I was feeling guilty for being so trite, for being so, I don't know, not trite, just acerbic. But it's nonsensical, and I'm not going to be overly compassionate about someone who's, having an affair. She's with a married man. And like I said, she's not some 20-year-old ingenue. She's 35 years old. So she's divorced. She knows, better. All right, let's keep going. Let's see what she's gonna say this time. This chapter 11 is entitled In Love Again. Stephen phoned me the next day on my private line at the office. We talked for an hour. Is anyone listening in? His voice sounded anxious. No, I said, laughing. And the phone isn't bugged either. This was a whole year before it became fashionable to pry on royal conversations. Last night was wonderful, he said. Wasn't it just? I could still feel the afterglow, like a sky still ablaze long after the sun has slipped out of sight over a dark horizon. I have to tell you that I feel terrific. Oh, that's her. I have to tell you that I feel terrific. Me too, he said. Then after a pause, you do know you're really special, don't you, Leslie? I just want to get to know you better. And I want you to know just who I am. I thought he's right. In truth, at that point, I really didn't know much about Stephen Wyatt, his background, or his business. Our long talk the previous night had been about other things, in more esoteric, more profound areas. Somehow, we just hadn't bothered with, who are you, what do you do, and where do you come from? Obviously, I had not been reading the right papers, or I would have seen his name bandied about as the new playboy of the Western world. And thank you to our book club members who said, they were of an age in the early 90s to recall the tabloids being about. And they said you couldn't, basically you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a tabloid that had the news splash across it. So how the heck, could she claim to baloney. The first tabloids that I remember being aware of as a child was John Benet Ramsey. Because that, I mean, like I said, I was a kid. It was everywhere. Was that 96? I can't remember. I think it was around 96, maybe a little bit before. And I remember it stuck with me so vividly because it was the first time that I realized that something bad could happen to children. Because it had never really entered my awareness before. Like I just always, as a child, felt so safe. And it was the first time as a kid that I realized, oh, like something really bad can happen. So that's my first awareness of tabloids. Actually, it's probably my only awareness of tabloids as a child because it was relevant to me as a child. Other things just, and sometimes I remember the tabloids being so racy at the time that, because when was this, 1990? So, I mean, how old was I in 1994? So, I mean, I couldn't even read. Obviously, I wouldn't remember. But I remember sometimes, like when I was getting older, if we were in line and a tabloid had a really spicy cover, I vaguely remember the Sarah Ferguson when she's with John Bryan in the south of France. And she's got her top off and they're like he's laying on her. I remember my mother turning the tabloid papers around in the line so I wouldn't see it. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. Bleep, blop, bleep. I'm flying out to the States tomorrow, he said. I've got to go see my mother, but I'll only be gone a few days. Will you have dinner with me the moment I get back? Of course I will, I said. Promise? Promise. And I meant it. I'll hold you to that, Stephen said, and I'll call you when I get there. This is so hard for me to read because it just doesn't sound real. Like, it just doesn't sound, this is not how adults talk to one another. In my opinion. Okay. He was as good as his word. Oh, that's very Dickensian. Scrooge was as good as his word. 2 days later, the phone rang. It was Stephen calling from America. Where exactly are you? I asked. Home, he said casually. And we went on to talk of other things for more than an hour, while the clock ticked up the bill and the phone stayed glued to my ear, while that rich drawl came down the line from the wide open spaces 4,000 miles away in Texas. I had no idea then that home was the sprawling 20,000-acre ranch near the Rio Grande, I'm trying to think of, how do they pronounce it? I'm just an old cowhand from the Rio Grande, and I'll sing my song, in a cowboy band. Okay. The Rio Grande. All right. Because sometimes I say Rio Grande, Rio Grande. I don't really know how I'm supposed to say it. I'm trying to think of all my John Wayne days. Okay. Where the Duchess of York had been a guest in November 1989. When she was... Okay, so this... I think she said that... Let's go back and check, because I'm trying to piece together if they're having the affair at the same time. Okay, where's this party? Where's this party that she went to? Okay, it says Jacqueline's dinner party took place in the early spring of 1991. Okay. Early spring of 1991. Okay. It's about like a year and a half. Because Sarah Ferguson had been a guest at Stephen Wyatt's house in Texas in November 1989. When she was 5 months pregnant with Princess Eugenie, her hostess was Lynn Wyatt, the glamorous wife of oil billionaire Oscar Wyatt, and it was then that Sarah met Lynn's 2 sons by her former marriage, Douglas and Stephen. Sarah was guest of honor on an official visit to the British Festival at the Houston Grand Opera. In the Dallas lifestyle of the mega rich, getting a British royal to stay under your roof was the choicest social plum anyone could pick, and the Wyatts were not slow to capitalize on their incredible stroke of good fortune. After the opera, the guests had trooped off to a huge ball where Stephen monopolized Sarah for the rest of the evening, and the following day they had flown in the family helicopter into the huge Wyatt spread, with Sarah, who was a licensed pilot, taking the controls for one stretch over the vast rolling scrubland of the Old West. In all, her trip lasted 6 days. It was long enough for her to fall under the spell of the handsome Texan, who had been so attentive to her every need and who was so unlike the husband she had left behind in England. The two men could hardly have been more different, as I saw for myself, where Andrew is the rugger playing type who likes the camaraderie of his friends in the services. He was a lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy at the time. Stephen is a non-violent son of the flower power generation who believes in peace, not war, and is in his element in the company of women. Friends of Andrew and Fergie were able to pinpoint this as the time that their marriage started to come unstuck, remarked one shrewd observer of the scene. Suddenly the writing seems different, doesn't it? Friends of Andrew, blah, 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 blah. I had no idea of the drama behind the scenes, or that Sarah and Stephen were still seeing each other as I waited impatiently for my new lover to return from America. Nor had I heard of his curious business dealings with Saddam Hussein's government through his father, a legendary figure in the oil world who, despite global opinion, was reportedly still trading with Iraq. Dealings that would culminate in the autumn of 1990 with Stephen asking Sarah to host a dinner for him and the Iraqi oil minister in her second-floor apartment in Buckingham Palace. This turned into a night that was pure, undiluted fodder for the gossip columnists, particularly when the jovial threesome went on to Le Javroche, the Michelin 3-star restaurant in Chelsea, which charges the kind of prices that would cost most of us a second mortgage. A top-drawer reception was in full swing, hosted by the Tory party treasurer Lord McAlpine. Sarah had been invited for dinner along with Andrew, but had declined. He was somewhere on the high seas, and Sarah indicated instead she would arrive by herself after dinner was over. When she turned up with 2 extra guests, both of them uninvited, one can only imagine the consternation at the top table. Yeah, can you imagine? And one of them just happens to be the Iraqi oil minister. And we're, is it the brink or fully in the Gulf War? I learned later how McAlpine's wife, Romilly, that's a nice name, tried to save the day by seating Sarah between her husband and another VIP, only for Stephen brashly to grab Sarah's hand, sit himself firmly down in the next chair, and inform the world loudly, "My woman and I sit together." We read this before. Was it in Kitty Kelly? Who's quoting who? I'm so confused. Is Kitty Kelly quoting Leslie Player here? Because it's spelled the exact same. It's like Ma, M-A-H, my woman and I sit together. This story circulated in house parties from Belgravia to Boston for weeks to come, and probably reached Her Majesty's ears before the guests were reaching for their hats and coats. The next day, so Ronald told me, Sarah received a snorting letter from the Queen's private secretary, Sir Robert Fellows, roundly ticking her off for being stupid enough to hobnob with the Iraqi oil merchant. Sarah merely responded, "Oh dear, I've upset Bellows again," and threw the letter into the nearest bin. Stephen would ride any minor storm like that with ease. As I grew to know him, I found him to be a mass of contradictions, a split personality redolent of Jekyll and Hyde, though without any evil intent. He just wanted to be famous. One side of him, the side I grew to love, was utterly genuine, disarmingly open, spiritual, deep thinking. This was a man who drank herbal tea. Can someone a little older than myself please enlighten me? So in the early 90s, was drinking herbal tea some sort of Does that mean anything? Was it like they drink herbal tea? They're spiritual? Like, what does that mean? Help. There's just some things I just don't have the context for. Oh, all right. Let's find this again. Just utterly genuine, disarmingly open, spiritual, deep thinking. This was a man who drank herbal tea, believed in mind control. Like controlling your own mind, and like me, had followed the teachings of Dale Carnegie's Know Thyself philosophy. Oh yes, it's Dale Carnegie's Know Thyself. Oh my word. I mean, Dale Carnegie has his place, but to act like... Anyway, this is wild. And Werner Erhard's EST training, which subsequently became known as Center Network. He too was fascinated by the unknown and wanted to explore the cosmic mysteries that govern so much of our daily lives. Timmy. Psst, psst, psst. Stop. Oh, he's being so bad. If Stephen did indeed become a Svengali to Sarah, then I can believe that too. She was impressionable, and the man's magnetism was almost tangible. Yet I still find it hard to accept that Stephen set out or intended to spark off the disastrous train of events that had culminated in the royal scandal of the decade. Discounting poor Margaret's desperate love for group Captain Peter Townsend, there had been nothing like it for more than half a century, since Edward and Mrs. Simpson in the 30s. But Stephen was a victim of his own ego. The other side of him, the side that I found distasteful and rather pathetic, was that of a man striving for celebrity status. He was rich and running, but he wanted to be running with royalty and to relish all the trappings that went with it. On only our second date, he would say to me, "I want to climb mountains, Leslie. I want to walk across continents. I want to get to the top of the highest mountains in the world." Indeed, he was planning some crazy walk across Peru, and said he was trying to get permission from their government to allow him through. At least, as a social climber, Stephen Wyatt could say that he had made it beyond the foothills, thanks to Sarah. By the time we met, he had been invited to a number of royal events, and even found himself seated next to the Queen at a dinner at Windsor Castle. Through Sarah, he had won entry into the inner sanctum of the royal lifestyle, if not the wholehearted approval of some of the old-school advisors who found his manner too brash for comfort. I wonder, is he still alive? I wonder what he's up to. He must still be alive. He was a young man in the 90s, so... He had also been at the christening party for Princess Eugenie in December. I remembered the lovely official portrait of the royal family, minus Stephen, taken by Terry O'Neill at Sandringham, where the 9-month-old baby bawled her little lungs out. A taste of things to come, which I would later see with my own eyes. In those heady days, Stephen was riding high. His downfall would come more than a year later with those embarrassing holiday snaps found by a cleaner 4 months after he had left the Cadogan Square flat. An amazing oversight on his part, I must say. I don't think it was an oversight. I don't think anyone believes it was an oversight. How in the world do you move all your crapola out of your place and then just happen to leave a scandalous pack of photographs laying on a windowsill? Never have I ever. What are you into? You get? Oh, Timmy's going through an awful little stage. His hormones must be in flux. He's driving me crazy. Yesterday, he was pulling decorations off the tree. Like what? I've never seen the like of it. I've got to get him some sort of little bunny game. Something to keep him occupied. Okay. An amazing oversight on his part, I must say. They revived all the ghosts of scandal and gossip which haunted Sarah for so much of her marriage, even if much of it was due to her own headstrong thoughtlessness. The 120 photographs had been taken when Sarah slipped out of Britain with baby Beatrice aboard the Wyatt family plane and jetted off with Stephen into the sunshine of Morocco. With them in the party were other friends of his, among them American actress Priscilla Phillips, but it was the pictures of Stephen and Sarah sitting cozily together in a swing chair which set tongues wagging. He had his arm around her shoulder, and she had hers around his back. The result for Stephen was the modern-day equivalent of being sent to the tower, an order from on high to chill Stephen out from Sarah's inner circle of intimates. But when he was part of the circus, Stephen could certainly put on a show. At a glittering 1990 December ball at Buckingham Palace, to celebrate a clutch of royal birthdays, he proved he could rival Jean Kelly on the dance floor. He was there in the ballroom with Sarah and Andrew to toast the Queen Mother, who was an indestructible 90, Princess Margaret 60, Princess Anne 40, and Andrew himself, who was 30. Not bad for the son of a man who was once charged with murder. No, not Oscar, but Stephen's real father. For now, I was just glad when the phone rang, and his familiar drawl came down the line. "I'm back," he said. "Do we have a dinner date?" "We do," I said. "But this time you're my guest." He protested, but I insisted, and that really blew his mind. What? Oh, my head. Sorry. It blew his mind? Like, sometimes some things are just so overstated. Like, it blew his mind that you were going to have him to yours. Really? Like, he's been in Sarah's Buckingham Palace apartment, but it blew his mind that you're inviting him over to your house? Like, I'm so confused. "Leslie," he said, genuinely impressed, as we walked through the door of the exquisitely furnished English house restaurant on a short stroll from his flat, "I have never, but never, had this happen to me before." What, because she's treating him to dinner? Or she picked the restaurant? I don't know. I'm so confused. "Oh, here we go again. You must know the wrong women," I said, giving him a sidelong smile. "Does it worry your macho instincts?" "I'm not like other girls, guys." She should have that tattooed across her forehead. "I'm unique." Oh. He grinned and squeezed my arm as the maitre d' found us a table I had requested in a raised alcove at the rear, discreetly away from curious eyes. "Not anymore," he said, responding to my bantering tone. "If it's inevitable, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. The English house is exactly what it says it is, a small, intimate restaurant where you feel you are a personal guest stepping into someone's welcoming front room." Despite his best efforts to remain nonchalant, Stephen was still perplexed. Obviously, girls didn't behave like this in Texas. This woman, like, she never lets up on trying to separate herself from other women, and how she is not the same, and how she's so different, and it just reeks of insecurity. That's what, that's when I used to feel that way, like, I'm not like other girls. I was like 13. That's not something that you do as a grown woman, or you shouldn't anyway. Like, the other day, my man, he was like, "Let me tell you, baby," he's like, "women are all the same in certain ways." He's like, because I don't know, I was like acting up, like, he meant the things that, like, women get annoyed about in a relationship, or the how we there are certain ways that women do tend to act in relationships that are pretty much across the board. Like, what was it? Oh my gosh, last night when we were at the movie, he did something. Oh, I know. I had reached out to take his hand, and I don't know if he didn't see me or he didn't take it anyway, and I took off my 3D glasses and was like, And he looked over and he's like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "You didn't take my hand." He started laughing. He passed me back my glasses. And of course, I was laughing too. But it's like, just this little like, But it's just like, she's so like, "Oh, no, I'm not like anyone else." Everyone's unique. Like, every woman in the world is unique. Every man in the world is unique. My man just meant like and it's true, like there are certain ways that we do react. But Leslie Player is just like, she won't stop beating this damn drum. Okay. "Obviously, girls didn't behave this way in Texas. I still can't believe you're doing this," he said, shaking his head as I ordered the first glass of champagne. The meal that night came to over 100 pounds, but I didn't begrudge a penny of it. As we dined on Dover sole, and I don't know the Chablis, I don't know. Stephen unburdened himself, and I found the true man behind the mask he presented to the world. Perhaps it was a man Sarah had found too, though even then her name was not mentioned that night. He talked about his stepfather for the first time, Oscar, the oil tycoon whose Coastal Corporation Company was reputed to own 5% of America's oil reserves. I never really knew my real father, he said. My mother separated when I was 6, and I have no idea where he is now. What Stephen didn't tell me, although I found out much later, was the skeleton in the family cupboard. His real father was a New York property investor named Robert Lippman, who had married Lynn Sakowitz, an heiress whose family owned Houston's largest store, but they separated in the late 50s. In 1968, Lippman was charged in London with the murder of an 18-year-old model in Chelsea during what was called an LSD trip to hell. At the Old Bailey, he was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years in jail. Meantime, Lynn had met and married Megabucks Oscar, the main stockholder in the $8 billion conglomerate Coastal Corporation. Oscar adopted Stephen and his brother, and in 1963 changed their name from Lippman to Wyatt. He taught me all about the oil business, Stephen said, elaborating on his work with the eagerness of someone talking about a favorite hobby. His blue puppy eyes were alight with enthusiasm. He worked for Delaney Petroleum. My office is in St. James's, and I broker oil deals for Oscar, he said, and went on to explain the intricacies of big business in the multi-billion-pound oil industry. It makes the world go round, he said. My affair with Stephen Wyatt lasted just 5 weeks. 5 rapturous, carefree, ecstatic weeks when I walked on air and my world was the way I always dreamed it should be. My business was going well. The tournament was shaping up into something. Okay, so yes, this is happening simultaneously with Ronald because she's still talking about the tournament. Or maybe, I don't know, I'm confused. Maybe it happened, maybe her and Ronald happened right after this. Maybe we'll find out. The tournament was shaping up into something that would become one of the most talked about polo events of the year. And I was in love. She falls in love quick. She keeps on saying, I'm in love, I'm in love. Every time you turn around, she's saying, I'm in love. I opened my heart to this easy-talking, easy-listening Texan, who could have been the inspiration for the song, How to Handle a Woman. Eventually, in return, he talked openly of past women he had escorted in his life, names like Pamela Bordes, I don't know, Robert Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine. Really? And this is before all this went down, so... Robert Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine, and the American actress Priscilla Phillips. There was one notable exception. My Texan oilman was the soul of discretion when it came to Sarah, and her name was never brought up into our conversation, which is why I had no idea that they were having their fling until the day her father told me. Gasp. Many times we went out to dinner to small, intimate restaurants in an area where you are spoiled for choice, such as Toto's near Beauchamp Place, where Stephen had taken Sarah for their first London date after they met in Texas, or the sophisticated 190 Queensgate, where the food was so good that it was the late night haunt of the capital's top chefs after they closed up their own kitchens. Stephen had always asked me to keep our affair quiet. It's our secret for now, he said. Let's be discreet. That's always a red flag. But there was one nasty moment when a mutual girlfriend, I'll call her Annie, said to Stephen, I hear you and Leslie have been to bed together. He was shocked. Who told you that? He demanded. Leslie did, Annie said. What a bitch. I had never even hinted at it in front of her. Stephen was furious. He rang me up and began raving. How dare you talk about us to your friends? Hold on, I stopped in mid-flow. Wait a minute, I haven't breathed a word to anybody. Who says I have? He told me the name. Oh, Annie's just jealous and trying to stir things up, I assured him. She did ask me about you, and I denied outright that anything was going on between us, just as you told me to. Don't believe anything that stupid girl says. As far as I was concerned, that was the end for Annie. What I didn't tell Stephen was that a few days after our first meeting at the Chelsea party, Annie, who had been there and had witnessed the obvious chemistry between us, had rung me and confided, Darling, that guy you were talking to, Steve, You do realize he's a one-man walking stud farm, don't you? I didn't let on then, but yes, now I knew. Normally, at our dinners, Stephen paid, but even though I was being escorted by a man reportedly worth £250 million, though I never suspected it then, I insisted on paying on that second occasion when we went back to the English house. My treat. It was on that night that I revealed to him how I had slashed my wrists and driven through London in my blood-soaked nightdress. Stephen listened, his face intent. At the end of that sorry saga, he lifted my chin with his fingertips and looked into my eyes with a fierce intensity that was almost hypnotic. "Leslie, don't you ever do that again," he said. "I'll protect you from anything like that ever happening to you. And just remember this, no man is ever worth it." Then, as if to show that he too had been through a similar trauma, he went on to tell me about the first love of his own life, a girl named Doris Riso, who had been his Arizona college sweetheart. They were together for more than 4 years, and in the spring of 1989, he had asked her to marry him. "She was my very first sweetheart," he recalled nostalgically. So wait, he asked her to marry in 1989, and then in that same year, he's having a fling with Sarah Ferguson, and he's only had one girlfriend. I don't know. I'm so confused. "She was my very first sweetheart," he said nostalgically. "I took her home to meet the folks, and thank God that Ma liked her very much. It's important to me. She has to like every girl I bring home. Mom can be a real mother hen when it comes to my love life. Finally, I proposed to Doris, and she said yes. I was deeply in love with her." And I couldn't believe how happy I was. Life looked sweet. All the arrangements were made for us to be married in Dallas. We fixed a date. The church was booked. The reception was fixed. My job was taking me all over the place, and we didn't see each other for a few weeks. When the wedding was just a month away, she came out to London to see me for a few days. We were discussing all the details. And when I saw her off back to Dallas, everything was fine. And you know what happened? His voice thickened suddenly. What does that mean? Whenever I hear, like, when people, like, his voice thickened, like, that's all I can think of. I know that's not what it means, but I don't know. It's like, is it thick with emotion? Anyway. And you know what happened? His voice thickened suddenly, and there was a long silence. "Now, tell me," I encouraged gently. Stephen took a deep breath. "She sat next to a guy on the plane, and by the time they got to Dallas, she decided she didn't want to marry me. She called me from the airport and told me it was all off. Then she went off with this other man, and I never saw her again." What? Really? This is crazy. Everyone's nuts. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Oh, Stephen, I'm so sorry." "Yeah." His head bowed briefly. "I'm still not sure. I'm really over it." I wondered aloud if that was why he seemed to be playing the field so avidly to compensate, but without getting burned again. He nodded seriously. "I don't think I'm trying to prove anything. Sure, I've been with a lot of women, but no one in particular. That's why when you see stories about me and other women, I want you to take no notice of them. You understand?" This guy. I had to admire his frankness. Part of Stephen's attraction for me was his openness. Where's Doris Riso when you need her? I'd like to, I'm sure there's way more to the story than we know that he told. Because, come on, you're not engaged to some guy and, he's your college sweetheart, and then you have like one, how long is the flight from London to Texas? 8 hours? 12 hours, 13 hours. I have no idea. What I'm just saying is that you don't spend years with someone and then sit on a plane and be like, I guess I don't want to get married because this stranger is sitting beside me. Like, that's just too wild for words. And if someone did that, then I think they were cuckoo cuckoo. So there's got to be more to the story. I believe that someone could be engaged to a total idiot and then sit next to a kind person and be like, "You know what? Yeah, I just woke up and realized, like, that guy's an idiot." You know what I mean? I don't know. This is just too crazy for words. Oh, I had to admire his frankness. Part of Stephen's attraction for me was his openness, and the fact that, like it or not, at least you knew where you stood with him. I called for the bill, and he pushed my hand away when he produced his gold credit card and tried to reach for it. My treat, I said firmly, remember? Okay, he laughed. I must say you are a very unusual young lady. So different. At least let me buy you a glass of champagne at my place. We held hands as we strolled back through the quiet streets, but I couldn't help noticing that Stephen let go of mine as we approached his entrance and kept looking around. But there was no one about, and he quickly produced his key and ushered me through. That was the start of another sensual night of loving. Oh, please. There goes my breakfast. It was all the better because I had seen something of the real Stephen Wyatt behind the dashing playboy image, and the more I saw, the more it felt right to be with him. Good Lord, what? This is your second date, and it feels right to be with him. You're 35? Come on. This is wild. It's really nauseating. One thing struck me as unusual, and it happened every time we were together. Shortly after midnight, Stephen would leave the bed with an apologetic, "Don't be angry, I've just got to make a quick phone call." Sometimes the quick phone call would last close to half an hour, but I was too drowsy to care. Eventually, I would come to realize it had to be Sarah he was calling with such regularity, always around the same time. But that night, once again, I left in the early hours. We both had to work the next day, and he would be traveling again later that week. "I'll call you," he promised. "I can't wait." My heart was light and carefree, and I found myself singing all the way home as I drove the rolls through the dark streets of London. It was the next day when I made my first mistake with Stephen Wyatt. I told the Major about him. Dare I? How long is this next chapter? All right, let's go ahead. Chapter 12, Cat and Mouse. I thought about it long and hard. Sitting on a stool in the kitchen over a cup of coffee, I stared through the window down into the huge courtyard of the Barbican, where I was now in the small penthouse flat my agency had rented. Fountains were playing, couples were strolling arm in arm, and spring crocuses were popping their yellow heads up in flower boxes all around the square. It was going to be a wonderful summer. But first I had to get my life sorted out. There were two good reasons why I should tell Major Ronald Ferguson about Stephen Wyatt and what was happening between us. I knew I was falling in love with this handsome, charming Texan. Does this not seem like extreme? They were only together for 5 weeks. They were only seeing each other for 5 weeks. It just seems so brash. I don't know. Okay. The rabbit. I knew I was falling in love with this handsome, charming Texan, and not because he was handsome and charming, or because he could give me such physical pleasure between the sheets. Stephen Wyatt had produced a magic feeling inside me, and in turn, I had made him feel like... Oh my word, this is beyond bearing. Okay, so Stephen Wyatt's producing a magic feeling inside of her, and in turn, I had made him feel like he was with a woman unlike any he had met before. Or so he told me, and I wasn't about to argue with that. Okay, please comment. Am I crazy, or does she not just keep harping on the fact that she's not like other girls? It's like we can't go for 2 pages without her being like, oh, I'm so different. The second reason was that it was a natural way to cool Ronald's ardor and to stop the Major sinking ever more deeply and uncontrollably into the dark waters of his obsession. Still, his messages poured in. If he didn't hear my voice, there would... Where do you think you're going? No, 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 no. Are you okay, sir? He's fine. He was trying to climb up onto the laptop. Like what? Now he's offended. That's crazy. Okay, sorry. All right. So she's going to try to keep Ronald from going even more insane. Still, his messages poured in. If he didn't hear my voice, there would be up to half a dozen... What? Oh, still his messages poured in. If he didn't hear my voice, there would be up to half a dozen on the answer phone. I have gone through total agonies. I have placed you on my pedestal, and every day I just wait for the next telephone call or brief glimpse of your porcelain face. This guy, like, if this is really happening, then he's a stalker. Like, this is crazy. This was getting far deeper than I had ever imagined or intended. They say that sometimes it is better to be cruel. It is better to be cruel to be kind, and I felt that surely now was one of those times. I reached for the phone and sat for a full minute with my hand poised over it before picking up the receiver. Then I dialed the familiar number. Eventually he answered. The gruffness lifted from his voice as soon as I asked him if he could spare the time to come round, preferably that day. How about tea time, he asked. We sat on the soft black leather chairs in the lounge, with the tray on a low table in front of us. I was careful to sit a little away from him, on one of the other sofas. I suddenly realized that it was going to be more difficult than I thought. Yeah, why would you have a man to your house to tell him this? That's like, just tell him over the phone. Or meet in public if you must meet. That's crazy. I poured him out a cup of his favorite Earl Grey, 2 sugars. He sat back and studied me. You're looking well, he said. I managed to keep from blushing. But I felt so good inside that it must have shown. Somewhat hesitantly, I began, Ronald, I've got something to tell you. Yes, what is it? I think you should know that I've started seeing someone, a man. His name's Stephen Wyatt, but Ronald's face had paled, and he almost choked on his tea. What? He rasped. Who did you say? His name's Stephen Wyatt, I repeated then lamely. Do you know him? Yes, I know him, said the Major flatly. I know him very well indeed, but you obviously don't know much about him. Yes, I do, I said defensively. He has told me all about himself. Has he? Said the Major. Well, I would most strongly advise you not to see him anymore. But why on earth not? I was totally bewildered. I had been prepared for Ronald to be angry, jealous, upset, but this cold hostility seemed to be directed elsewhere, and not to be motivated by hurt or emotion. Major Ferguson stared at the carpet for a long time. Then he looked up. He has been linked to Sarah, he said. Did he tell you? No, I said, truthfully. I had no idea. Well, he has. Have you told him you've been working closely with me? No. Yes. Oh, I don't know. I really couldn't remember. Somehow I didn't think Ronald's name had ever come into our long talks, just as Stephen certainly hadn't mentioned Sarah. No, I don't think so. Well, I suggest that you tell him immediately. Ronald's thick brows were drawn together, and in that moment he looked as fierce as I'd ever seen him. His voice hardened. Have you been intimate with him? What does he feel for you? Wait a minute, I cried. What is this all about? Suddenly I had a blinding flash of perception. Are Stephen and Sarah having an affair? Yes, a blinding flash of perception. There was a pause. Then Ronald shook his head. No, he said. It was 1 week later that he admitted that this was the first time he had ever lied to me, and it was to be the last. All right, I said. When I see Stephen again, I'll tell him about us, but I won't say how close we've been. You do that, said Ronald. He left without finishing his tea. Stephen was away for several days. While he was gone, something very upsetting happened. My mother phoned me. I had told her about this Texan jet-setter who had come into my life, though without going into any intimate details. But Mummy's instincts were as sharp as ever. Yeah, it seems like they'd have to be like... You wouldn't have to be sharper than a butter knife to have picked up on this guy. I think you should take a look at ES Magazine, she said, and buy the Daily Mail too. ES Magazine was a glossy supplement to the London Evening Standard, which came out on the first Thursday of every month. Why? I inquired. What's in it? Your Texan friend, said my mother. Just buy them. That was when I shed my first tears over Stephen. I bought the papers from my local newsagent and took them back to the car. The first article in the mail featured a picture of Stephen smiling out of the page with a lovely young girl next to him, whose sunny smile equaled his own. Her name was Fiona Feely, and it didn't require much imagination to realize that they were what is known in gossip columns as an item. I was so shocked that I just burst out crying and sat behind the wheel weeping bitter tears and tasting the salt that ran into my mouth. If there were any passers-by, I didn't notice them, but they would surely have wondered at the bizarre sight of a poor little rich girl crying her eyes out in a Rolls Royce. Also, she mentions her car so much. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of times she has to mention that she's in a Rolls Royce. The other article made it worse. The magazine had gone to town on Stephen, probing his past, his present, and his possible future as a suitor for Sarah. Suddenly I realized why my Texan oilman had been so cagey at being seen with me near his apartment. It all started to make sense, except that no one was actually saying that he and the Duchess of York were more than just very good friends. My own senses were reeling, as if I was trapped in a Hampton Court maze of blind alleys. It was just 48 hours, my world had turned completely upside down, and emotionally I felt as if I had been mugged with a blunt instrument. I had tried to tell Ronald I was in love with another man. Instead, he had flashed the first warning light indicating that I might be caught up in something way beyond my comprehension. The lover I thought was so open and frank was involved with another woman. Worse, he was exerting some kind of influence over a member of the royal family whose own father was besotted with me. It was a sort of nightmare scenario that had all the makings of a Hollywood soap series, except that it was real and it was happening to me. That night, Stephen phoned from New York. My eyes were dry by now, and so was my voice when I read the first paragraphs of the Daily Mail story out to him. Well, I said, throwing the paper down. How about that? Isn't that something? His voice came back without a hint of hesitation. If anything, he sounded angry. Didn't I tell you? He said vehemently. Didn't I say about stories of me and other women? I said, don't believe them. I know, I said. I can't help it. I just saw it today. I've been out with a lot of people. Fiona is just one of them, and I'm not seeing her anymore. Believe me. I'd like to, I said, weakening. Good girl. I'll be back at the weekend. I really think it's time I told you everything about myself, and then you'll understand. It's important that you do. Okay? Trust me. Okay, I said. What I meant was that I'd try. All right, let's stop there because I'm thirsty. I need to go get a drink of water. This is just, I can't even. I mean, this is so, it's an interesting book. I hate it and love it at the same time. Okay, let me know what you think, and I will see you very soon. I hope your holidays are still going well, and I will be uploading more Silver Screen Holidays today. All right, talk to you very soon. Bye.